Welcome back to Raw Green. Francesco and Emma here, and today we're diving straight into a problem most people don't even know exists. Emma, set the stage for us. What are we talking about today?
Well, we know that the transition to electric cars is very much underway, and we're looking at another problem now because, as you know, EVs are heavy and they have a lot of torque, and this creates a lot of tyre pollution. In fact, an EV can shed sort of hundreds of thousands of times more particulates through its tyres than a modern engine emits from its exhausts. So let's take a look at an interesting solution today.
Yes, every car, electric or not, releases tiny particles of rubber every time the tires turn. It's an invisible pollution that adds up to millions of tons each year, making tire wear one of the biggest sources of microplastics on the planet. And today, we're talking to the team trying to stop it right at the source. Anson, Siobhan, welcome. Could you start by telling us who you are and what the Tyre Collective does?
Yeah, thanks for having us. I guess I'll start. I'm Hanson. I'm one of the three co-founders of the Tyre Collective. I'm more in charge of the partnership and funding side of the company.
And I'm Siobhan. I'm one of the other co-founders, and I lead our research and testing.
Thanks, Siobhan. So tell us a little bit more then. What are tyres really made of? And what happens to all of that material as they wear?
Yeah, so the majority of tires are actually made of plastic now. Some tires, such as like truck tires that you see in like really heavy-duty vehicles, have more natural rubber in them. But if you're looking at your everyday passenger car, those tires are made of plastic. And right now, as you're driving around, as everyone knows, your tires wear down. And currently, all that material is going directly into our air and water.
And is this a problem that's actually recognised?
Yes, it is. Several different governments have been researching this for a few years now, and there is actually different legislation in progress looking at how to help measure this and also regulate it. We're seeing stuff occurring in Europe as part of the Euro 7 guidelines where they're looking at regulating, and we're also seeing things develop in the US, particularly in California and Washington, where they're looking at mitigation options and also how to limit some of the more concerning chemicals in tires, but then also are looking at these emissions as microplastics on the whole and looking at how they can help stop this pollution from going into the environment.
What kind of quantities are we talking about, and where does it end up?
Oh, you're going to stretch my memory on being able to quote exact numbers for you.
No, we want the figures to the third decimal number, okay?
I guess the general rule is, in Europe, there's over 1 million tons produced every year.
Oh my God, 1 million tons.
Oh yeah, over 1 million tons. I think it's 1.3 million tons produced every year. And these are the particles that are ending up in both our air and water. I think when we first started, I think we were particularly interested in this pollution, both starting as a microplastics first, but then I think it's also a major source of air pollution. So in cities like London, for example, recent studies have shown that we're now breathing in more non-exhaust emissions, which is tire, brake, and road wear, than we are exhaust. And this is set to increase with EVs generating about 20 to 30% more tire wear.
Wow, and I can imagine it's a growing concern as developing countries sort of expand their roads and ultimately their personal car use and things like that too. So, Siobhan, you've actually got a biology background, haven't you? Tell me, how did you come across this problem and how it sort of relates to health? Is that where you started?
Yes, that was definitely the inspiration. So my background's in kinesiology, and then I have a minor in biology. So yeah, I was initially very interested in looking at how microplastics on whole are interacting with human health, because that's kind of my area of specialty. And then looking at how it interacts with our oceans was another driving force to seeing like what's actually going on in our environment. So yeah, I mean, tire wear is a very interesting pollution source because it affects not only us, but also the environment in so many different ways. It has several chemicals which are highly toxic to different marine life, and they're just starting human trials right now to understand how that affects us. But then it also is the fact that it's this physical particle, a microplastic, that's accumulating in our environment, in our food chain, and the long-term effects of that are not really understood well on human health. There's been quite a few ocean studies looking at how it's accumulating and affecting different species in different ways. But yeah, it's an interesting pollution source because it has like all these different factors that go into it, and it's going into the air and the water at the same time.
When did you first realize this invisible pollution was such a huge blind spot across, let's say, media knowledge and common knowledge?
Yeah, well, that was actually like at the very beginning of the company. Like all like me, Hanson, Hugo, and our co-founder Deepak, we're all looking into microplastics at whole. We had a strong interest in seeing like how we could help protect the environment. And the more we were looking at microplastics, we're like, oh, tire wear is this huge source, and no one's doing anything about it.
Yeah.
That seems like a problem.
Yeah, it's actually the second largest source of microplastic pollution. And I think we started this as a master's project back in 2019.
Yeah.
I think 2019. Yeah, I think coincidentally, when we actually discovered the problem, the UK also issued the first call to action on tire wear. And in that study, I think there was maybe it quoted 5 studies and one National Geographic article on this pollution. And I think that body of small research really validated this whole problem for us. I think as a master's project, I think we were thinking about, it's you see a lot of images of like, microplastics and birds and like kind of single-use plastics. And there's a lot of focus on microfibers. But, why is no one talking about this the second largest emitter? And why is there kind of no solutions around this? And I think that is really how we got started, is kind of looking at how can we raise awareness on this problem, but then also develop a solution to tackle it.
So how does your technology work? What's actually happening? What is it composed of?
So what we're developing is on-vehicle solutions to capture this pollution at source. So we found that the particles themselves are charged from friction with the road as they're generated because there's carbon in them. So we're able to use electrostatics to effectively attract and capture these particulates. So that is kind of our now patented technology. And we've implemented this as a retrofit device, first for commercial vans. And we've tested it with different partners and various trials over the years and different iterations of the prototype. But the core technology is that we use electrostatics to capture these pollutants.
So just to sort of visualize it then, this is a kind of a physical box that sits just under the wheel arch at the back of the back tyres. Is that right? You're doing them on the front tyres as well? I think I've only seen them on the back tyres. And then Tell me more.
We've done front and back, but primarily with some of our fleet operator partners, we do it at the back because it's easier and there's higher ground clearance.
Okay.
The principle behind it is quite simple. I think our first prototype was actually a balloon. So we had a tire, some sandpaper, and we were sanding this tire, and we saw these particles drop on the floor. And I basically took a balloon and rubbed it against a sweater, and then saw these particles jump up and down. So that has now manifested into this like device. You said it's about the size of a shoebox. Okay. You attach it kind of under the vehicle, right behind the wheel. So as you're driving, these particles are produced. It gets picked up and air flows through the device, and anything that passes through a device gets captured on this like array of electrostatic plates.
And how much are you expecting to capture as the tires are going round? Is this done per mile? How much are you getting? Is it all of it?
So we don't capture all the particles. We capture the smaller kind of airborne particulates.
Okay.
So that's anywhere from 100 microns and below, with a focus on like PM10, which is when you look at air quality, it's PM10, PM2.5.
Right.
So when we look at efficiencies, we look at how much airborne particulates we capture. And on roads at the moment, we capture up to kind of 17%. We've seen some pilots go up to 25% of the airborne particulates. Siobhan, if you want to talk a bit more about that.
Yeah, it was up to 15% of the total particulates, and the airborne ones we're looking at right around that 20% mark. And I just wanted to add that the reason why we're focusing on the airborne ones is these are the most toxic particles. So these are the ones that are the immediate hazard to human health that you're breathing in when you're walking along the roadside, and also smaller particles because they have higher surface area, they actually leach more of those chemicals that I was talking about into the water. So they're a bigger concern for water pollution. If you also look at like as your tire is rolling along, some of those particles are getting projected up into the air. And so that's what we're capturing. But some are also remain adhered to the road surface. And those are actually really difficult to get off of the road. And so that's not what we're targeting because that's not going to be possible with our kind of capture technology. To get those off the road is going to require like deep street cleaning, which some municipalities are looking at doing, but it's a little bit out of scope of what we're hoping to target to help remove those most harmful particles in the environment.
So if Emma and I goes on a road with a vacuum machine, it will not work with a vacuum cleaner. Basically, that's what you're saying.
No, but I've seen some interesting technologies around racetracks because they have to take a lot of the rubber off the racetracks, obviously, to keep it going. So yeah, I've seen things in that space. Do you notice a difference in types of tires, brands of tires, or different road surfaces, even different vehicles? Are you seeing a variation there?
Yeah, so in general, bigger, heavier cars wear through tires faster, which is also why there's problems with EVs, because EVs are much heavier than their ICE counterparts due to the added battery weight and the higher torque engines. But, whenever you're in an EV and they accelerate really fast, which is super fun, but it wears through tires pretty quickly. So yeah, that's a general rule of thumb. And then there's been a lot of research into different road types and tire types and brands. A lot of that work is still under development. There's a few different transportation agencies who are doing very in-depth testing into that. They published a few papers. In general, it kind of also follows like the same rule that you would expect. Roads that have higher textures wear through tires faster. Winter tires that are made of like softer rubber in order to grip the roads better tend to wear through tires a little bit faster than different counterparts that are made of harder materials. We can provide a list of references if you're interested in looking that further, but those are, the general rules of thumb. It's nothing that's really shocking about how you would expect things to behave.
So there's nothing a consumer can do at this point to say, okay, I'm going to choose the better type of tire that, I've got choices that can help me here, no?
Well, this is actually what Euro 7 is looking at doing. They're trying to introduce a labeling program where they're doing really in-depth testing for each different tire brand and model, and then they're going to be pushing to have a consumer-friendly label on there that will tell you what the pollution amount of that particular tire is. So that'll be coming in the future. As of right now, to help reduce pollution source from cars, you can look at public transportation to help reduce your impact as well. And then also driving responsibly helps to reduce.
Driving style can affect
Driving
that.
style makes a really big impact. So if you're like accelerating, braking really rapidly all the time, that does wear through tires, which that's a hard thing to change. So that's also a motivator why we're like, okay, we need to come up with a better technology solution that helps capture this, because putting everything on driving style is not really feasible.
Sorry, Simona, I'm curious to know, since it is in the same area of the car, what about braking pads? Because I also know braking pads, they are pretty polluting and still under the same PM 2.5 and PM 10 categories.
Yeah, brake wear has been a big issue in looking at PM pollution, and also different ones if they have like any like copper in them, it's also an issue as well. That's been something that has gone through kind of legislation cycles in years past. So that's actually already in development. That's a large reason why regenerative braking is a big deal, because it helps reduce those emissions in the first place. And there's already quite a bit of legislation in place making sure people are choosing better brake pads as well. With our technology, if there still are some particles produced, we are actually capturing a little bit of that. But on the whole, like brake pad emissions are already very well taken care of.
Let me ask you something, both of you actually, about the technology itself, because since it is not a novel thing, the tire aware pollution, why there isn't already a device like yours already manufactured into the cars when you buy them brand new? Why isn't it already there? Is there any particular reason? We have any kind of instrumentations into cars right now. Why there isn't something like that?
Well, that's what we're aiming to do. Hopefully, we would love to have our technology on every car out there to stop this before it goes out. I think the reason why you haven't seen it yet is that it's still a relatively new issue. As you said, when we started this in 2019 is when that first research was coming out, and people started to really look into that. And through kind of like now awareness about the problem is growing, I think you're going to start to see some of this being integrated directly into new vehicles, similar to a catalytic converter where it could become a standard.
I think also because there has been more of a focus around CO2 emissions, and I think the priority was first looking at reducing tailpipe emissions or exhaust emissions first, and I think that led to the development of EVs. And now, I've in some of my past conversations, some people call exhaust emissions the lowest hanging fruit, and then the real challenges are around these particulate emissions from brakes and tires as well. So I think that's why there's been first to focus on exhaust emissions and with the goals to eliminate that. And now I think we're slowly seeing a global shift away from exhaust emissions towards non-exhaust emissions now through some of the regulations Siobhan has spoken about. And I think that's where we can bring the most value in presenting ideas that are kind of, for around this pollution. We've always envisioned the technology to be the catalytic converter, but for tire wear. Before, later down the line, there might be developments on tires where they pollute very little or to none, hopefully. But, from now until then, what can we do to start limiting this pollution and limiting its emissions into the environment?
How are tyre companies responding to you when you talk to them about this?
They've always been, I think they've always been quite interested in this field.
Okay.
I think there's always, let's say, there's always some kind of, contention around if they're working with us, they might be admitting this as a problem. So I think it's always been through the lens of kind of research and understanding. I think where we provide one of the first technologies to really capture the smaller particles from the air and really be able to analyze them and really understand. And I think that has brought value to them as well.
So I need to ask an obvious question now. If millions of these particles are out there and you can potentially capture them, can you put them to any use? Do they have any purpose to be recycled into new tyres again?
Yeah, so these particles are essentially a form of micronized rubber, and that's a pretty established industry. At the moment, they use kind of end-of-life tires, cryogenically ground them into and repurpose them into new rubber products as like infill. You can, depending on the quality, you can use them industrially. You can use them in like new rubber batches. You can use them for that you can use for new tires or new kind of rubber products. You can put it into bitumen for roads for added kind of properties and benefits. So there are a lot of use cases for it. I think what we capture is smaller than what you cryogenically ground. So we're looking at other solutions or other products that we can integrate this pollution into. But the possibility is definitely there.
What is the hardest engineering challenge that you have or you have to solve to make it work in real world conditions?
On the technology or on the
technology?
Well, we're inventing a whole new field, so everything's kind of been a challenge up until now. I would say a lot of our R&D is kind of focused on first like increasing our specificity. So the area behind a tire has a lot going on. There's dirt and mud and rocks and leaves. And so our first phase of development was looking at how do we only collect what we want to be collecting. So just the rubber particles. So it was really focusing on developing the electrostatic systems to be operating when we wanted them to be able to withstand water and all of that and make it really sturdy. We've now kind of achieved a lot of the marks that we're looking to at that. So when you look at the material we collect, about like up to like 90 to about 100% of it is actually just rubber material. So we have really high specificity now, And our current engineering challenges that we're looking at is like, how do we take this specificity and increase the volume? And so that's looking at a lot of the aerodynamics around the vehicle and where these particles are specifically flowing. We know now if we can put our device in the correct spot and if we can entrain as much air as we want, if rubber particles go through it, we will capture it. So that's the current engineering challenge. But I said, like, each thing that we go through is a whole new field that is still under development. So it makes it quite fun. But yeah, there is a lot of really interesting challenges.
It must be. Yeah.
It's really fun. This is what we love about startup technology. You know, there's lots of things that go wrong. There's lots of experiments that fail. There's lots of things that you learn when you're in the lab or out testing that you weren't expecting. What stories do you have? Where has it all fucked up on you before, and what have you learned from it?
I can't tell you how many hours I've spent like crawling underneath vehicles to like check on prototypes and like
Glamorous.
just having blood all on me and like trying to see what's going on with a headlamp because it's dark under there. So there's been a lot of in-field time, which is fun, but also sometimes very cold and wet.
I'm curious to know from, let's say, an everyday usage of your technology. If you're able to collect even 20%, it is fantastic. It is something that doesn't go into the environment. But as a car user, how would I manage all of this? What is your imagined flow of this? I collect the particles, they get accumulated somewhere in the car, and then?
Yes. So I think for the retrofit device, we primarily tackle commercial fleets only, and mostly it's because of this
idea.
The maintenance and you know the need to change the filters. You know, we're capturing like kind of solid particulate, so it does accumulate over time, and we do need to change the filter. So you know, we tackle commercial vehicles that have centralized depots. So at the end of the day, all the vehicles are in one place. Then we can go and change the filters for them, and then also centralize where we process the particles. So for later reuse, then we can use it, centralize all the materials that we capture for reuse later on as well. I think for the integration, you know, I think we're trying to align that kind of capacity to, you know, annual MOT checks. So if you own a passenger vehicle and with our technology, you as the driver or the owner won't be interacting with these particles, and some trained professional will interact with it. And we have a process in place to minimize to capture these particles and minimize any losses.
Yeah, so we kind of have like a short-term and like long-term track for integrating the technology into vehicles. And yeah, as Hanson, there's a reason why we do the commercial vehicles first as the short term, because it's a lot. We don't have to build up those maintenance systems yet, and allows us more time to develop the R&D where it becomes this self-sufficient system on passenger cars when that's ready to go.
Plus, on commercial, you have that, let's say, centralized logistic that will help any I don't know, discharge of the device. So that makes totally sense.
Yeah, and there's already really routine maintenance schedules that are in place where they have to be checking on these vehicles. And so it's a lot easier to be like, while you're already doing this mandatory routine maintenance, empty a filter. Versus on passenger cars, like it's much more difficult, and we need it to be more robust, have a larger storage capacity so it can last a longer period of time before people are bringing it into their mechanic. And that's where you see we're going to need that integrated technology in passenger cars versus the retrofit works really well for commercial vehicles.
I don't envy you. Look, we see a lot of startups that are doing new things, new technologies in new markets. I think when you've got a whole new market in what we see now as quite a new problem with a new kind of impact that we're trying to understand as well on health and things, as you've mentioned. With new solutions, new business models, new packages going behind them, this is a lot for you guys to be taking on. And you've clearly got a lot of stakeholders that you're needing to engage and educate along the way and take with you on this journey. So what would you want if you could have a sort of a public awareness campaign or a sort of piece of regulation or something coming out? What would sort of make this ice-breaking journey sort of easier for you?
I guess regulation on tire wear and especially on kind of PM pollution. I think there are a lot of awareness, especially in London. I think there's a lot of awareness and guidelines around air quality and improving, and a lot of initiatives improving air quality. I think non-exhaust emissions is kind of slowly is making its way into that conversation, and we're seeing cities respond to that. We're seeing a lot of cities starting to look at non-exhaust emissions and then starting to tackle that on a city scale. I think that would really help drive our commercial strategy, our adoption, and really implement our technology on more vehicles to really create that impact that we want.
I'm curious, are there any other competitors out there? You can obviously put your device onto a vehicle to solve the problem. Is there any other solution out there that we could look at with this?
I think other solutions that capture tire wear on a vehicle,
yeah.
not that we know of.
No.
There were some other technologies that can do that use filtration, but I think ours is probably the most tested at the moment. I think there are some, we're talking about, we focus on the airborne particles. There are other technologies that implement them on the side of the roads, on the kind of the sewage areas. So mostly focus on like water runoff and the particles that are leached through water runoff. So there are different, I think it is such a big problem, and I do think there needs to be different solutions at different intervention points to tackle all of the million tons that are produced just in Europe.
Do you think that your potential customer, is it someone that will adopt this willingly, or it must be forced by regulation? Is it something where you see a market reception from this?
We've seen a lot of inbound interest from OEMs to tier 1 suppliers to different fleet operators, both in logistics and maintenance fleets. I think there's a component of differentiation that we offer. Everyone, EVs are becoming a norm, and everyone is slowly adopting EVs, and everyone will have EVs. So what is the next step when you talk about your company ESG goals and your kind of corporate sustainability agendas? I think we're getting a lot of inbound interest. I think regulation will kind of accelerate that adoption, but we're seeing more and more companies looking at our solution as a form of differentiation. I think that's the most value we bring. And also for them to understand how much their fleets are emitting in terms of tire wear and really quantifying that. Because
that is the good point. That is a good point, Answer. Is if you just focus on the environmental part and you take away the economic or the financial one, yes, it is good to have that, but especially for companies, you need to have both into your value proposition. So if you deliver to them also a system to monitor the performance, tire wear, which equals to maybe more fuel consumption, I don't know, or other insurance related things, if there is some sort of saving that they can gain out of this, that will dramatically increase the success rate of deploying the technology. Don't you think that?
Yeah, and those are some areas that we're kind of developing. I think we've been focusing on a lot on capturing these particles first and understanding, what particles are coming off, how much, what type of particles we're capturing. I think, a lot of regular conversations around regulation, there could be an extension of ULEZ and tire tax later on. There's been discussions around that. I think that would bring kind of a more financial incentive to what we do later on.
So what's next for the Tyre Collective going forward then? What do you need?
Right. What do you need? I guess, right now, over the last kind of 4 to 5 years, we've been taking this technology from in-lab to on-vehicle, testing it on roads every year, new prototype every year. And now the product is pretty much, is well packaged. Everything is in one device. There's not like 5 components all around the vehicles. And now I think the product is kind of ready. The retrofit device is ready to kind of be launched into the market. Our next kind of goal is to convert some of the pilots that we're doing with cities and the different stakeholders and different operators into first paying customers. I think in line with kind of regulation and development timelines, we're also now working more and more with tier one suppliers and OEMs to look at how we integrate this technology into new EVs, both for commercial and personal use as well. And yeah, we slowly gain more interest, talking about the benefits, around reducing air pollution. We're getting more and more interest from cities for their public fleets as well. So right now, the technology is mostly for vans and commercial vans. So how do we extend that for buses, and then even larger vehicles later on for like HGVs, which is purely by weight produce a lot more tire wear.
I would like to ask Siobhan, what would it mean to have your tech deployed at scale from a health perspective? We know PM 2.5 and PM 10, they have, let's say, cause several health problems. What would it mean to have a large city with millions of cars using your device?
Well, okay, to set a
What
little
can
bit
we
of
expect?
context
Yeah.
initially.
What kind of
Actually,
improvements we can expect?
Actually, in London now, there's more PM particles being produced from tires than there are from tailpipes because there's such large EV adoption there. So if you're looking at the health effects, looking at the particles purely from like an actual like physical particle perspective, as like a particle that's beneath 10 microns, so PM 10, those health effects on like asthma and other lung and circulatory issues are very well documented. It follows the same kind of guidelines that you're seeing from tailpipe emissions or other PM 10 emissions. So there's quite a lot of research on how that affects us and also what the associated health costs are. But once again, looking at like the chemicals and what that means for us, that is still also under development. So one chemical called 6-PPD or 6-PPD-quinone is the one that is incredibly toxic in water to different fish species, but they've just started doing studies looking at how it affects human lung cells, and those haven't been released yet. So we don't know what that additional effect on health is going to be currently. So all they're quantifying right now is what the physical particle is doing to lungs and circulatory issues.
It's not going to be good, is it?
No.
Whatever that report is.
That tends to be the trend, but let's wait and see what the research says.
No, but if at a policy level, at macro level, you're able to quantify for X million PM 2.5 or PM 10 reduction into the atmosphere, you gain savings into the national sanitary system or health system. Mm-hmm. That, I mean, it is something that there's so much research going on that it is quantifiable, even as a base worst and best case scenario. So will make totally sense for regulatory bodies to have something like that monitored.
Yeah, and those models that quantify like monetary health impacts are very well developed. This is how most government regulations go. So for each country, they've been developing their air pollution models and what it means for health impacts for many years. So it's fairly easy to look at like what the tire wear PM 10 pollutions would mean.
Very good. Very, very good. Well, then I would like to ask you the last question. Do you think we need better tires, smarter cars, or what? Or just your device?
I think we need all of it. It's such a complex problem. I mean, it's an ecosystem. We need to have tires which aren't toxic, first of all, and then hopefully produce less wear. But then like the fundamental problem is that if you want cars to be able to stop, then the tires need to be able to grip the road. So we're always going to have some amount of tire wear coming off. And then that's kind of where we come in. Like, can we collect as much of this as possible before it disperses in much of the most toxic parts? And then we need another line of defense after that for collecting the stuff that's initially stuck to the road. So then you're looking at how do we have better filters or street cleaning that like helps prevent this from flowing into our waterways or becoming resuspended back into the air. So it's going to be an ecosystem that requires a lot of collaboration. But yeah, stopping it before it gets out there is a really good way to help prevent a lot of effects that it's causing.
Yeah, that's a very good way to put it in. Thank you, Siobhan. Thank you, Anson. It was a great talking to you. Thank you, Emma. and we'll catch up soon.
Best of luck, guys.
Thank you for having us.
Ciao. Thanks for listening to this episode of Raw Green. If you made it this far, you probably enjoyed it. So don't forget to hit subscribe and follow our podcast. It's an awesome way to support our community. At Obi, we're all about research, life cycle assessment, and the green tech innovation. Stay in touch through our socials or visit our website. Links are ready for you in the description. Catch you in the next episode. Ciao.